Journal Night.
Good evening, everybody, or good day, depending what time you're watching this. You're here with the Rangers Journal for our new and rebranded The Journal Report, previously known as the Coppin Report. You can We have rebranded, Dave will edit that out. We have rebranded the Coppin Report down very simply down to we seen what happened with Coppin. So we've just rejigged the name a little bit to the Journal Report, to the players that we have scouted across the South Americans in this one. Joining me today is our lovely friend Ben as we go through 5 players in Chile.
Yep, happy to be here, Mitch. Let's rock and roll, mate.
Let's rock and roll. So we've obviously went down some more obscure routes, obviously for finding players. Some of these will be gems that you never know. One day we might pick up, and some of these might be players that we don't pick up. A couple of these names we have been linked with as well, which is always good to have in the back burner. And as always, we don't preface to be experts in the players that we know that we've spotted here. We have used the eye test, we've used some of the stats test, and brought you 5 of the best that we've seen through in Chile. So, first up, we have Alan.
Saldivia, I would say.
Yep, and from here on out, we'll just refer to him as Alan, just for the avoidance of butchering any surnames here.
Okay, so looking at Alan, he's 23 years old, 6 foot tall. So right away, before we go to any stats, he's going to fail your vertically challenged test, Mitch. I know you're into guys who are absolute giants, but he's a centre back, plays for Colo Colo. I'm sure most people watching this will probably, if they could name a team for Chile, it would be Colo Colo. At the time, kind of Gordy's put us together. He's played 13 games, started all 13, playing a total of 1,157 minutes. An average rating across those games of 7.41. Passing accuracy, 89%. Long ball accuracy, 49%. Dribble success, 67%. Tackles won, 72%. Aerial duels won, 64%. And per 90, interceptions is 1.4 per 90. Clearance is 4.6 per 90. And recoveries, 5.6 per 90 minutes.
Excellent. So I think reading between his stats there, as you say, he's certainly not vertically challenged. He's no Radvan at the back, but and the number starts with a 6, so I can accept it.
Okay.
I think reading it that though, he looks like a very kind of composed player and a kind of quite a complete player in how he plays. I think for me, being good in the air, when your height starts with a 6, I kind of expect that you're good, strong in the air. I think one of the big things for myself is, especially when you'll break that down to kind of how that would translate to Scotland, is looking at those recoveries per 90 and the clearances per 90. I think the recoveries in particular, yourself against the hammer throwers, you're going to have those moments where you need to be really switched on at the back for me, and I think he shows me that he's pretty switched on.
I was looking at the Chile slides today, and I think I was getting into America because I think that might be next on the series. But the big thing I've noticed to a couple of the centre halves Gordy's picked to is their dribble success is very high, and they can take the ball from the back and step into midfield, which I think for us is a big thing that needs to happen. Like if a pass isn't on, and they're like, as you say, the hammer throwers, they will also give you space. They're not going to press you all the time, so you need to be able to step in and pull somebody out and then just play a simple pass. So I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And so that's 2/3. So every 3 dribbles, he's completing 2. So.
And as you say, I think especially under that Russell Martin style of play of everybody needs to be able to play the ball, whether you're a keeper, whether you're a centre back, whether you're a striker, or whether you're anything in between. You've got to have a good pair of feet on you and be quite intelligent with the football. And I think that also, having a strong ball playing centre back allows that midfield, whether that's a 3 or a 4, it allows them to move up further up the pitch and make the spaces for themselves, which I think also helps pull apart low blocks as well, because you can make the other team move. And whether if you're composed enough as a centre back with the ball at your feet, they don't know if you're taking it on at them or if you're trying to find your pal in front of you to put the space in. I think one of the things that also catches my eye with Saldivia is the contract expiring just at New Year's Eve there as well. So you think with that current value being £2 million there at the moment, you would assume there's probably some wiggle room on that there if he's not going to extend that deal. But some of the other things that we've noticed there when we were looking at him is, to the shock of nobody, obviously, his athleticism and his physicality are some really big key points. Surprisingly, I think, and maybe it's just myself, I don't ever remember too many Uruguayan centre backs being too quick. And I think him being part of that new generation that are probably a bit more, they're probably built more on athletic raw qualities as opposed to war machines at the back that we've
Yeah,
seen obviously with Uruguayans in the past. Um, you've touched on it there, that composure in the pass and just driving out from the back. I think that's something that really helps, with the player, and a player that you could probably see doing quite well under that current Russell Martin, the way that he's probably going to play. And I think for me, being 23 years old, if the money's right there, there's quite probably a good chance that he does well and obviously makes money down the road there as well. So moving on to our next player that I will leave our Ben to introduce to us all.
so our next player is probably the one we've got the least amount of data on. So this also playing for Colo Colo, Francisco Marchant, 18 years old. He's 5'6", so Mitch is really going to get raging now. But he's a winger. As we can see, he's kind of when Gordy's put us together again. 7 matches, only started 3, 249 minutes, but an average rating 7.34. And in 3 starts and 4 sub appearances, we've got 1 goal, 3 assists, and creating 2.9 chances per 90 minutes. We've got an 81% passing accuracy, 50% accuracy on crosses, 5.4 touches in the opposition box per 90 minutes, and a 53% dribble success. And also ground duels. So on the defensive side, we've got 55% ground duels, 2.9 recoveries per 90 minutes.
I think he's a very, very raw player, at 18 years old, and as you say, looking at those stats, he's quite clearly, obviously, at the start of his adult football journey. And I think, when you look at those 3 games started, with one thing I'm not sure, and I'm pretty sure you're not as well, is if he made some cameos off the bench and earned those starts, obviously, But again, as you say, the data pool's quite small. But again, these are those kind of wee gems that we should be looking for. Of he's quite raw, he's untapped, he's for anybody unfamiliar. Colo Colo are a very, very difficult team to get into. They operate at the top level in South America. It's not as if we're looking at some Diddy team from South America that is just there making up numbers and farming out players to the likes of Porto, Sporting, and other Portuguese, Portuguese and Spanish counterparts. Colo Colo have got quite a lot of lofty ambitions of their own, and I think that one thing that really sticks out for me is that cross accuracy at 50%. You know, I think the last time I read, elite level wingers have a cross accuracy of something like 20 to 25%. So to be doing that in such a small sample, I think that really, really stands out for me.
I think you can see why he's broke into 18 because for the small sample size, some of the numbers are very impressive. Like you're nearly pretty much 3 chances a game per 90 you're creating. As you said, that every second cross is finding one of your teammates, and in 3 starts, because you don't know some of his. I mean, I don't know some of his cameos off the bench could have been 5 minutes, 2 minutes, and added time. So I don't really know the ins and outs. But in 3 starts, you've scored a goal and you've set up 3, or kind of maybe not far off it. Maybe he has scored a assisted off the bench. So I agree. He does. He's kind of one you would be taking, and that would be a kind of longer term project that I don't think you would see a lot of him maybe right away, unless obviously he comes in and sets the world alight. That would be one kind of down the line for kind of making big serious profit.
I think so too. I think he would be one that would maybe come in and take that NCAA Agamani prospect player role for a year or two, where he maybe does his business for the first 6 to 9 months at the club behind the scenes with very little, very little coverage of what he's doing, because obviously the B team's not there anymore. But we maybe have that slightly longer adaptation and integration period that we might see him for early rounds of cup games against maybe lowland teams, or League Two teams and things. Like, I call it those give him a run out minutes just to see what
Yeah.
temperature check him. And then if he was to come, you wouldn't be surprised if he went out on loan, say from January onwards for a wee while, or spent the whole of next season on loan somewhere like Wraith Rovers, or my personal favourite, send him down to Airdrie to go and see Reece McCabe. I think many players could do well under Reece McCabe, I think. But I think looking at, again, the strengths that we've been able to pull out there is that pace, the athleticism, the flair. Um, and But I think the underrated one and how he does well, especially in that Russell Martin team, is the pressing and the linking up of play. Looking at his heat map there, you can see he's a winger that likes to stay on his wing, and he likes to cut in, but not too far in that he's getting in the midfield's way either. I would say he's quite resourceful with that space that he's got.
I would agree. Again, it's in a very small sample, but in 3 starts, he's the kind of darkest areas of that map are almost as chalk on the boots. So he's not a right winger like Cherny going to cut in on his left. He seems to maybe be a right fitted player on the right.
Aye, sticks to his guns, and I think sometimes you've got to have that player that wingers playing on their natural foot and their natural width. For me, I'm not a huge fan of wrong-footed wingers, so to speak. I prefer my wingers to be right-footed, plays in the right, left-footed, plays in the left. If you're both-footed, you play where you're needed. And I think, he's one of these players that we would probably want to nail him down to. You are a right winger. That is your role. We're not going to try and turn you into a left winger. But we shall move to our next player in question, who is Lucas Sepida.
Cepeda. And again, on the Colo Colo train, but I think for any Chilean player, Colo Colo is probably where you want to be. The same way if you're probably a Scottish player and you're a youth player, you're probably going, I'm at Celtic or Rangers, even though obviously the state of Scottish youth football and progression is an argument for another day in another podcast. But he is 22, 5'9", um, £2.5 million winger. He's started 11 games out of 11 at the time we did this, 990 minutes, 7.77 rating. In 11 starts, we've had 3 goals, 3 assists, 2.4 chances per 90, and 82% passing accuracy. And as you touched on, crossing accuracy 23%. But in elite footballer, you're talking, you say 20 to 25%, so that's kind of right in the norm. Touches in the opposition box again, 3.9. Dribble success 54%, and then a big one again, recoveries for defensive work 4.6 per 90 minutes.
I think what I really like about Sepida is when you look at that heat map, you can see where he does his defensive work, and you can see that he's not adverse to going right across that front three. Like, he's not afraid to get in the mix there and, put himself out there. And using that sample size that we've got there of 11 matches over the course of the current season, that's a goal involvement, whether that be a goal or an assist, pretty much one every 2 games at the moment, which is really, really good numbers there. And I will say, 5'9", I'll have to allow it. I might not like it, but not everybody can be a big 6-foot giant. But I think that the chances created and stuff like that as well shows you the level of work rate that he gets through. But as you say, marrying that in with the recoveries, he's a workhorse on both ends of the pitch.
I think that's going to be important for us. Obviously, Gordy is everybody you're probably going to see here is going to either be pacey or athletic, but I think that's something Rangers have missed for a long, long time. there needs to be a kind of core of guys who can run and move. We've had some good footballers over the years, but some of them have just missed a yard. And I'm sure people listening or watching could rhyme off probably 3 or 4 players as I say that. So I'd agree. Unlike Marchand, who's kind of breaking into the team, he's 4 years older, but as you said, he seems to be comfortable. Very, very seems to be a left-sided winger, but is happily to come right across the front three. Not happy to go back and help his defenders out, which I think is something, especially in bigger games, because obviously all games kind of fluctuate for having all the ball and being the dominant attacking force expected to win, and then you get into big European games that are against Celtic, especially maybe away from home, and you're going to have to do your defensive work well to try and win a game as well.
I think as well where I can see him doing really well, as you say, with both aspects is as the fixture lists and the games start to come thick and fast when we get to those points of 3 games in 7 days, we're going to need those players that as you say, are just pure athletes, that they will graft their backside off. They might play 60 minutes on a Tuesday or a Thursday night in Europe, but they're going to need to play another 60 minutes on the Saturday or the Sunday, depending. And I think that's where players like Cepeda, being young, hungry, he's athletic, he's got pace, he's good in the dribble, and he's also pretty direct as well. I think sometimes when you know that the overall team's quite tired, I think sometimes you just need somebody to say, "Do you know what, I'm grabbing this by the scruff of the neck. I've got a half yard of space in front of me. I've got the legs to get there." And that's not to say that just to put it in the mixer, because this isn't 1990s, but sometimes you need somebody just to say, "I am dragging you, you, and you with me, and I'm taking you all into this space." And I think that's those games that last year in particular we really struggled to have that person in the team that scruffed it, and I think that's where somebody like Cepeda could maybe come really right out onto their own in those games that we drew last year. That maybe goes from a draw to a win.
I think that's a big thing for us, turning those draws into wins will be for both teams going for the league next year. That'll be probably obviously the 4 Old Firm games plus those games. Because I mean, if you think of them, I mean the amount of last minute winners you see over the last 10 years. I mean, there's been numerous, and then for us, I mean, there obviously has been some like Igamans at Parkhead last season, but I mean, obviously a meaningless game in terms of winning championships and stuff. But obviously, you need to be trying to do it when you're in the race. Whereas obviously the last time we were in the race under Clement, we made an arse of it in March. We had like Motherwell at home, Ross County away, Dundee away, stuff like that. So, we need to build the squad, and if this guy was to be part of 3 or 4 wingers who can come in and push each other on and just make it uncomfortable for fullbacks every week, I'm all for it.
Exactly, mate. But we'll have to take the average height warrior.
At South American fire, mate.
That's exactly it. So
Small but
we
mighty.
we will move ourselves on to our next player, who is,
Oh, Mateus Sepulveda. So
and
he is
for
not.
anyone noticing here, I'm letting Ben butcher the surnames so that I don't butcher them.
So for the first time in this episode, he is not from Colo Colo. He is from, and I think that's a university, the University of Chile, basically.
Yes,
26, so he's a wee bit older, getting into his kind of prime years. 6'1", so he passes the 6 foot test. He is a left back and also can play left midfield. In our sample size here, 12 matches, all 12 started, 965 minutes, 7.42 average rating. We've had 3 assists in 12 games, and we're creating 2.3 chances per 90 minutes. Again, probably important for our Russell Martin team for defensive players. Passing accuracy 81%, long ball accuracy 65%. Now that is very, very high, especially for 12 games. Crossing
huge.
accuracy 30%, so just maybe creeping above that average that we've discussed. 64% dribble success. Defensively, we've got 56% tackles won, 67% in aerial duels, and recoveries again 5 per 90 minutes.
I really like the Lucas Mateus here. I really do. And there seems to be a recurring theme that most of these players' contracts are running to the end of this year, the end of 2026. So he's only got, what's that, 20, he's only got 18 months left in his current deal. And you start to say to yourself, at 6'1", you can see that he likes to get, as you say, chalk in the boots there, right up there in the wing. He's clearly got a good set of heels to be able to play left back and up in the wing. Um, and I think you can see using that heat map there that he quite literally probably spends just as much time in either half as he is now. And he just looks like a big direct unit, 6'1", doesn't mess about. He gets his tackles in, he gets his aerial duels won, and he gets through the workload. And as you say, if somebody, I would sooner see a player giving us an average of 7 out of 10 for 30 games a week, 30 games a season, rather than a player that gives us a 9 out of 10 one week, but then gives us a 3 out of 10 for the next 4 weeks. Having that level of consistency, and as you say, with the assists, creating nearly, 2.5 chances per 90, and that the passing accuracy is outrageous, to be honest, at 81%, and the long ball accuracy again, you know, something else. Looking at looking at the dribble success, how important do you think that is for a versatile player that goes left back and left mid?
I think it's important. I think the chatter of is Jeffy a left back or a left mid, and you see probably the one thing Jeffy is really really good at. Probably the bigger teams are looking at and going, well, we can develop the rest. See, stepping in with the ball, getting into space. I mean, if Jeffy did end, like obviously he's still young and I'm not bashing the boy, but if he had a bit more of an end product, I think the kind of talk of the Chelsea and that would have continued. I think into this summer. So I think it's really important. As for because he's the same again, he can play left back, left mid. He's saying he can play left back and left midfield, so that's obviously been tried and tested. Because he's 26, it's not as if he's Jeffy's age and we're looking at attributes and we're not maybe too sure. Can you defend? But you're really good at stepping in. Can you go forward? So this is obviously tried and tested. This is like a Lee Wallace playing left mid to Sasa Patbatch when he signed for Rangers under Walter
Aye,
Smith. That's what it screams out to me. Somebody can give you a wee bit of both.
and I think it doesn't hurt, I think, to have one or two utility men in the team either, because history of recent seasons has taught us, if anything, we don't want to be putting square pegs in round holes. We want to be able to say, well, do you know what? We've got two or three guys that can play left back and they can drop into the midfield, or we've got guys like Dijon, who for me don't put him anywhere near the midfield, but Dijon can cover anywhere in the back line for me. He's my defensive midfield. He's my defensive utility man. And then up top, we had last season we had Hadji who could play in the 10 and he could play on either wing. I think players like that are maybe grossly underappreciated in a lot of squads. They say maybe grossly is a wee bit of a gross exaggeration, but I think players like them are really, really important. Where it doesn't matter where you put them, you're still going to get that athleticism, that level of dribbling skill, the consistency, and everything else that comes from them. That in their natural position, we might get on average a 7.5 out of 10 from them. But when we ask them to go and do it on the opposite side, that goes from a 7.5 to a 7. The quality drop off isn't so huge. It's not one of these where you're not watching Ross McCausland going from being in the right wing to going to the left wing because you know what he's going to do in the left wing. And every defender in the league knows what he's going to do. The first thing he's going to do is chop it back inside. And it's absolutely brutal. I don't know about you, but it's brutal to watch.
Aye, I think he's predictable on both sides, but I think there's such a good. He's got. I think is it on it whatever side he likes to come inside on all the time, and I'm going. See if you went the other way, you'd be flying. Just a couple of times, just go. I'm going that way, and
Aye.
if I scuff across, I scuff across. That's good. The only thing I'm going to touch on for Sepulveda here in the last one, his heat map suggests that he takes corners. You
And
can see
we,
that.
we could be doing with a bit more variety in there.
Well, obviously we've at the time of this recording, Joe Rothwell has been in the door maybe just over a week now. So, and he, but again, having a variety of set piece takers, absolutely fine by me.
The same here, mate, because we've got in the door now, we've got the tried and trusty, we've got Tav in there. we've got Rothwell, we've got Asgard now as well. He's quite capable at taking free kicks, and he's quite good at off the left corners and stuff like that as well. And I think as the team evolve into a new era of change, I think things like that need to be part of that evolution. There will be times where the tried and trusty will be the safest option to go, where we say, tell you what, we're 3-0 up against whoever. Do you know what, Tav? Just you go and bang it and see what happens off it. Or we say, do you know what? We're 2-0 up. Tav, you've taken the last couple. This is the time that we're going to experiment and try somebody else's delivery. And I think this takes us very nicely onto our last man, who we have been linked with previously, the ever wonderful.
Good evening, Vicente Pizarro. And yes, as Mitch said, we have been linked more than once. Even recently, there's been reports from kind of ESPN over in kind of North and South America that he was talking to a club while on international duty with Chile. So people probably watching will be familiar with the name at least. 22, 5'7", centre midfielder, £3 million, and kind of a wee bit different to the rest. He's got an extra wee year on his deal there. So out of stats, we've got 12 matches, 10 started, 906 minutes, an average rating 7.38, 2 goals, 1 assists. We're creating 1.6 chances per 90 minutes, passing accuracy 89%, long ball accuracy 59%, and on the defensive side, tackles 167%, interceptions 1.3 per 90, and again, recoveries 5.4 per 90 minutes.
I quite like Pizarro. Um, I've I've watched a couple of the old highlight reels and stuff, and as always, I'm not gonna lie, they can obviously tell everybody's highlight reel can make a player look phenomenal. But I think he just looks like your typical no-nonsense South American defensive mid for me, where he plays in that six, he can drive forward, but he's got a bit of spice about him, is the only way I can put it, where he's got a wee bit of grit between the teeth. He's not afraid to put the tackle in, and that shows in his key characteristics down there of, positional and tackling. He puts he's constantly in the right places to make these right decisions. Um, you know, don't get me wrong, he can be prone to the odd wild tackle that would probably need to be kind of not so much neutered out of him, but fine tuned a little bit here. Um, 5'7", he is in fact vertically challenged, but we've got Cora Barron in there, but he's not in the land of the giants either. I think when you've got the likes of Diamande and Rothwell in there and beside him, or Asgard further up, you've got a couple of 6-footers in there that can do the aerial work for him. But because I think that's one of the key stats that we don't have a wee note of is the aerial ones they're looking at it. You know, you don't need the 5'7" guy to be going try and fishing it out the air when you've got the likes of Manny Fernandez behind him at 6 foot, 6 foot, fridge freezer pretty much. And you've got Rothwell over there and you've got Asgard over there. You've got taller players around him. So let him be the guy to receive the knockdown, to go and drive the ball forward, because he's got that passing accuracy to take us from maybe being a bit spotty on our own back line to, tell you what, there's Diamande on the halfway line. He's the guy to thread that ball through to Diamande and get the ball moving the opposite way. Um, he's really good at breaking up play. He's good at starting attacks. And I hate using the term because it's becoming more and more integrated into football, but almost that quarterback six role where he's the launch pad for both things, offensively and defensively. I don't like using that term, but I think it's a very probably fitting way to describe him.
I can get Raskin vibes, and I don't think, if you're talking about a quarterback, I don't think Nico Raskin is a quarterback, but I think he proved himself as a six at the club this season, that he was very, very, very good. Being rewarded with Belgium call-ups, hopefully going to go to a World Cup next summer. I can kind of get this vibe, but as you said, I think he might be a wee bit more. I can take the ball and I can play it past, like, more times than not, whereas sometimes Raskin, I think, can be a wee bit rash. He seems to be, but I can get that kind of workhorse vibe from Pizarro as well. I think most South Americans you'll say will bust their ass for you, kind of no matter what. We
I
will kind
still,
of say interest has interest cooled now that we've signed Joe Rothwell. He's kind of again another kind of sitter, can play as a 6 or an 8. Raskin's kind of the same. Do you need another?
why not have them overloaded?
Hey, listen, I've got that loaded video, man, and it's amazing.
But
Amazing.
the only thing I think for me that Raskin still needs to work on that maybe Pizarro edges ahead of is Pizarro's probably got a better crossing ability than Nico. I think Nico's not the most tidy of crosser. He's not the most accurate. Admittedly, the way that we've had him playing, we don't really need him to do that. And I think equally under Russell Martin, we probably don't need him to be doing that either. But sometimes when you see Raskin in a position to cross, sometimes you go, do you know what? We know how this is going to go more often than not. But I think Pizarro offers that if Raskin, for example, was to move on to any of the teams that have been rumoured to be linked with him, you say to yourself, do you know what? A transfer market value of £3 million, depending on, we're not here to quote rumoured prices or anything like that for players, but if we got some serious money for Raskin, you go, I tell you what, there's a 22-year-old with a price tag of £3 to £5 million on his head. If he continues on the current trajectory that he's on, you could quite easily see a zero behind that three, and turn yourself into a £30 million player with how transfers, yourself, how player transfers work now. You have a good 6 months and suddenly you're a £15 million or a 20 or a £50 million player if you're English.
Aye, I would agree. I think, as you touched on, though, having the aerial duels for Pizarro's interesting because, especially for us, having watched Raskin all season, for his height, he is very, very good in the air.
It's like a leaping salmon, as they're asking.
So he caused a lot of issues. But I think I'd agree. I think if we're going to compare him to Raskin, for me, I'm hoping Raskin signs a new deal, even just a year extension, better terms, and we get him to a World Cup, and he's a good World Cup. And then after that, you're going, look, you've had a great World Cup.
It's
On you
peak
go.
value time, and
Aye,
it's
that's my hope. And if he doesn't want to sign a new deal, I still think maybe then this window you maybe need to chat about cashing in.
or at the very least, you have that conversation in January to say 6 months to the World Cup,
Aye,
you
what you
are
doing?
going to leave.
Mm.
Because especially if he continues to get in the national team like he's doing, and you know, eye test and what the Belgian manager said, the Belgian manager loves him, and his teammates love him at international level there as well. He's pushed at even more seasoned vets down the pecking order, you know, and I think, as you say, we know that as a club, we are not a club that can say no to a £30 million bid for any player. So if somebody came knocking on the door and went, chap, 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 Nico son, 25 to £30 million, I think every single one of us to a man none of us would grudge him the move. But then we have to be asking ourselves, well, who is the next Nico then? And that's where coming back to players like Pizarro, where you go, 22 years old, all we need is 2 or 3 good years from you. Sign a 5-year deal, 2 or 3 good years. We can do for you what we done for him.
Aye, yep, I'd agree. Spot on.
But what we'll do is we'll wrap up today's video, the journal report, up here. And as always, for everyone watching, every night is a Rangers Journal night.